I want to say something about the shadow side of shadow work because it it becomes sometimes a vortex that we feel like we can't get out of. And it can be a little bit confusing because we go into shadow work because of wounding, not because of choice. And sometimes there's stuff that's been really repressed that takes a lot of energy to go into and come out of and to feel steeped in, and then it's a little bit disorienting because it brings the past up, so it's not quite clear in the beginning, like, am I digging? Is this helping? Is this making it worse? Like, and that can be very much a healthy part of the process of healing. Like, sometimes things get worse before they get better. I say that like healing is kind of a mystery, and I'm just putting that word on it. I'm not even sure I believe in it, but it's true that if there's suffering here and I've been avoiding it and I turn towards it, then it seems like I'm making more suffering. But actually, I'm just looking at it, I'm feeling it. That kind of turning towards the shadow, and it's actually an alive shadow in this moment. I'm reacting to things in the present. I'm triggered more easily than I may have been previously or could possibly be, or I have relationships that are either actively harmful or actively triggering. Like, having a living shadow is very different than going and digging in the shadows of everything that I've been in before, or everything in our collective psyche that I have enmeshed into my own body, and can't really distinguish what's mine and what's anyone else's. So shadow work is very, if you want to call it that, shadow work is very important in a living state of, like, it's the nervous system's protective mechanism to bring an emotional flashback up and protect us right now if I still actively feel unsafe all the time. And there's many ways that I work with people with trauma, with wounding, with just this old stuff, this dark old stuff, and maybe it's new stuff. It's maybe active darkness that's like sad, grief, anger, pain. And like anything, we can become identified with the shadow. You might know the terms trauma bonding. I recently learned the term wound warrior. I think that was the term. There's also something else. Let's see if I can find it. It's related to something else, so I'm not going to look for it. But yeah, trauma bonding, like all of these ways that we can get stuck, and that's going to feel very different than actual alive working through something that's like we've been living under it. Like, if we go digging for it, or if we get bonded into something from someone else's, or we get identified with, I'm the traumatized one, I'm the one that's been through more than anybody else, I'm a survivor, I'm a perpetrator, I'm a victim, I'm a something. It's kind of natural for that to come up. at a certain stage, and there's more, there's deeper. We can go deeper. Because true alive awakeness is no one thing. Like, we know this, like, this is what draws us to awakening, is just the maybe unrealized how to put this, might not be realized, but ever accessible to everyone, aliveness that is life. Like, it's not mine, it's not that special guru's, like, it's as much ours as the person yelling at their kid in the gas station. Like, aliveness is no one thing. We are not any one thing, and so we are not just our shadow. And if we're feeling that identification around shadow work and only ever being in the trenches of life, and we're going to feel that sense of being disconnected or not quite being in the flow, or feeling alone, or feeling cut off, or something not quite right. Because life is very playful at times. Like, the energy of life is to be whatever is coming up and then responding. And so some of the most, like, easily accessible images of awakeness, like those divine teachers, those divine beings, children, animals, how playful, if you're actually in their presence, how playful. And that is when life is relatively safe in the moment. Like, it's different if there's a threat, which happens. Like, that's as natural a part of life as brushing your teeth. Or maybe that's not natural in the Mother Earth kind of way, as like eating or breathing, of like being attacked by a predator. Like, that's natural. But if you're not, if there's ease and relative safety and relative calmness, like, life creates art and music and dance and sport and play. That quality of playfulness, which, by the way, like, is very absent from most or much of like what we consider to be spiritual work or psychological work or medical work, where there's a problem to be solved and it's work and it's do. Like, play, I would say, it seems very basic, is quite advanced in this process. And how paradoxical, because it's both. But if there's resistance to even accessing that, then you can see the mechanism of not okayness and separation. That's fine. It just means that there's more to come online in relation to feeling okay, in relation to being here right now. And just to be aware, too, that if there's a craving for play, or there's an aversion to doing too much shadow work or digging, if you give that some space and no agenda, because play can happen in the smallest of, like, a tissue floating accidentally out of your hand, and then there's a little dance or smile or shadow, not like shadow, but like a form of light playing. Like, to notice is life playing right now? Is there playfulness? I would encourage that, probably even more so for many folks. Also, in the realm of vocation, a lot of people come to me like questioning, like, what do I do with my work now? What do I, in my process of awakening, like, how do I earn a living? Like, should I be healing others? Should I be serving? Should I be teaching? Or like, these very kind of like narrow ideas of like, and sometimes that's true, and who am I to say? Like, I don't know. For you, I don't even know for me. It's evolving, it's unfolding. I can't put it into one thing, but I do know that more often than not we see authenticity displayed kind of in spheres where people have more self-awareness and safety, which can often be maybe in spiritual or healing realms. And so that's modeled in a certain way of like, oh, these are really authentic people who, but no, like, there are many forms of awakening, like many facets of awakening, and waking up to the aliveness of one's place in the world. More people than you might think display this. Like, you might more easily see it in athletes or artists or musicians who are really in the flow, in the play. And you might also see it in doctors or mailman. Or I'm thinking about the person at my son's preschool who, his security guard, like, who protects both of them, actually, like the flow of just, like, you can call it serving in one way, but in another way it's very playful. It's very like life just authentically being itself. How else could it be in that way? And sometimes we forget that we're modeled things by and large in society that we think we need to follow to belong, and we have a very narrow view of like what that looks like, or the successful accountant, or the successful professor, or celebrity. I don't even know. I can't even think conventionally anymore, but I would extend that to the realm of spirituality, and that like many messages that we get are disconnected from the practical world because there's an over-identification with being overly open all the time. And of course, spiritual awakening involves opening, but it also involves like closing, if that's what's happening during life, like in opening back up and assessing, okay, is there a car driving at me? Okay, I better close. I better have a boundary. Okay, life is open right now. And so to trust that there is no one way to be, there's no identity that you need to find, there's no box that you need to fit in, there's no role of being in shadow or in openness, or I'm not even saying like go be the playful one, but leaning into all of these ways that life is blossoming, and it does become a dance at a certain time. And it's okay if you're not to the point where play is accessible. It's not to like shame feeling shadow and really being in the trenches of it, because life is so hard. Like a human being's life is so hard to survive and to make it and to live. Like, I really mean that. Like, you don't need to be anywhere other than you are, where you are. And I'm just kind of widening the lens in that if arriving feels like being in the shadow work and doing the shadow work and just living in the trenches, like, it can go deeper than that. And deeper doesn't mean darker necessarily. It might some places on the journey, for sure. And unexpectedly, there might be play that arises. And you might not be in a safe space to feel it, or there might just be this spontaneous opening and laughter, or fumbling with the football, or whatever. Like, that's as spiritual as any catharsis or digging